Welcome to The Chase, a limited series on the Shallow End podcast feed that focuses on successful chases of a card, set, or player run. Thanks for listening. I'm Dave Schwartz. How far would you go for a truly great and scarce and historical sports card? Today's guest is Luke, who you can find on Instagram at Bleecker Street Cards. He hopped on an airplane not once, but twice for a single card. But if you think that's the extent of this story, if you think that's what the story is about, think again. Because this isn't just a story about a chase. It's a story about relationships, about helping people when they need it. And it's a story about doing the right thing because it's the right thing, not because there might be a reward for you when it's all over. Let's welcome into the chase on the Shallow End. He is Luke. He is Bleecker Street Cards. It is great to have you here. Luke, what is the chase you're talking about today?
Dave, awesome to be here. The chase is a signed 1949 Bowman Satchel Paige card. Some would refer to it as one of his rookie cards. And this one is, in particular, one I was looking for a long time. Never really thought it would be something that I could easily get at auction because it could be very competitive in those scenarios. But I was able to find it privately in a PSA 2 with an auto grade of a 9. And I have it here just, again, I know this is a recording, but for at least Dave's pleasure, a little picture of, or a little viewing of the card. Should I jump right in?
No, not quite yet, because this is an extraordinary card. I want to get some background on it first. Not exactly a pack pulled auto. We're putting it right. So I think my question would be: is your background part of it? Is Hall of Fame autos, and not just of say recent people, but of legends, right?
Mm-hmm.
At some level, you knew a card of this existed, but before finding the copy that you were going to pursue, was this on your list of the type of cards that you wanted? Did you want this particular signed satchel, or what is your background with this card before we get into the pursuit?
Yeah, great question. So I've spoken about this in other places, but I've always had a particular affinity for the stars of the Negro Leagues. And that probably started as I was 11 or 10 or 11, something like that, watching the baseball documentary, the Ken Burns doc, and being pretty wowed by basically knowing nothing about the Negro Leagues at that point, but had already been a bit of like a baseball history nerd. And, just reading all the backs of my dad's cards and stats and whatnot. I felt like I knew of all of the stars, all of the main players, but then, certain names would pop up and in that inning of the documentary, and the commentary from other players at the time was that they were so beyond talented and so worthy of being at the same level as any other superstar of the time. I was like, how did I never hear of these folks? And so, anyways, it always gripped me. And of course, the three biggest names as you think about the Negro Leagues are Josh Gibson, Jackie Robinson, and Satchel Paige. And as a little leaguer, I was often the pitcher on my teams, and something about doing the like over exaggerated cocking back and putting your leg high up into the air that Satchel Paige would do in some of these videos and photos always just was like what I wanted to do on the field too. And so it's probably, you know, um, again, 10, 11, 12, and looking like a total fool doing this Satchel Paige wind up in Little League. But he was just an idol even then. And as I got more serious into my collecting, you brought it up. I really enjoy the autographed card niche of the hobby, and most, I guess, to specify, in-person autograph cards, mostly vintage cards, and of those names that rise above the rest as ones that we all look up to or can at least really appreciate. And my first PC there was Jackie, but Satchel was right there behind it. And I think actually maybe the first uh, major card I got was signed 53 tops Satchel Paige. And before I even got a signed Jackie, just because they were a little bit more available, I think they're like a pop 33 or 34. And there was always one like lingering on eBay. And I think I made my first deal for one on one of those. And it just became okay, well, I've got this one. He's got 1974 old Laughlin Old Black Stars card. I got one of those signed. Um, he's got a Puerto Rican League sticker from 72. I don't know if I'll get that signed. He's got the 76 Goofs pants that you can get autographed, and I got that one signed. Um, and then the two main cards left are the 1948 Leaf or 49 Leaf and the 1949 Bowman. And given the Leaf entry price unsigned is these days feels to be at like 20 grand or so, and it's a pop 200 across all grades. There's no known signed version out there. It felt like the only way to kind of fill the complete the run was to hopefully one day get a 49 Bowman signed. And that so that was probably on my mind pretty quickly after getting the 53 tops, which was back in 2020. And that didn't materialize until I guess 3 years later. That was late 2023. I was able to grab this card from
And
a yeah.
was that the
Mhm.
first one that you had become aware of? Were there ones before this one in which you pursued unsuccessfully?
Yes, definitely. So one of my favorite things of the hobby is digging up cards, and especially ones that are hard to find. And I had joined, every online forum you could think of. One that was really useful for my Jackie chase was sportscollectors.net. It's where you have to pay. It's like it's paywall. You have to pay, I think, 12 to 15 bucks a year, but all the TTM autograph uh, collectors and hunters use that site to trade addresses and cards of where you send things to get autographs. And so I was on there reaching out to people from 10 years ago who had posted a signed 49 Bowman, and I send them an email like, hey, I saw this thing from 2009 or 2013 that you posted. Any chance you still have that? And there are at least two leads that I can think of that they said no, don't have it anymore. But and then I ask, well, do you remember who you sold it to? And try to get to run down that trail, but they fell dry. And then I started um, reaching out to auction house representatives. So when it's sometimes hard to get a hold of those people, but whenever I had made like a larger purchase at an auction house, I'd always follow up and say, hey, I'm always looking for signed Satchel Paige, signed Jackie Robinson cards. If you ever come across one, let me know. And there was one that finally came out of the woodworks through that um, um, avenue as well, but it was faded. The auto was faded. It was like probably an autograph grade of a 5 maybe, but it said auto off. And the card was in good shape, but their asking price was like $72,000, and the only sale at that point was $8,000, which was also a card that I bid on. But I did not. I chose purposely not to win that because it had tape over where the autograph was, and that autograph was also incredibly faded. And so in my mind, it was kind of like, this is a card that was once signed by Satchel Paige, but is no longer like signed by Satchel Paige. And so I didn't. It just, you gotta be a little bit picky, especially when you're talking about putting a lot of money into a card. And so like, the right one will find me eventually. And so I guess I had, 3 or 4 swings that I really tried to run down, and then just constantly searching, right? Like every auction that opens up, every eBay, the 3 things I write into every single search bar is Jackie, Page, and 48 or 1948 Leaf. Um, and those, just never amounted to anything.
So the
Um,
one that,
yeah,
sorry, so the one that you eventually ended up getting,
yeah,
where did you learn about the copy and the owner?
yeah. So one of the avenues to dig up cards is, a lot of people will respond if you have, a direct need for something. I think the hobby is generally great when you say, "Hey, I'm looking for this." People kind of keep that in mind sometimes. And but if you have those cards to begin with and post them and say, "Hey, I'm looking for more," I find that I get a lot of traction on those. So I was posting into Facebook groups, um, just, here are my signed Jackie Robinson cards. Looking for more, always looking for more. And one key thing I would include is, even if you're not looking to sell or trade, just like to connect and talk to fellow collectors. Um, and so I got a random message after one of those posts from what looked like a 75-year-old woman, who had a very, sparse Facebook page. And it just was kind of that, "Hey, I have some Jackie cards." And I was like, "Really? Okay, sure. What do you got? Would love to see them." Um, and they sent a blurry photo of a handful of signed 49 Bowman cards, including a signed 49 Bowman Jackie, Early Win, which is another tough one, Larry Doby, and then a Satchel Paige. And the other 3 were graded, but the Satchel was not. Um, and so I was like, "Oh my god, how do I want to know more." So it turns out it was the husband of the woman's page that was interacting on his. They shared a Facebook, and it's just really leading with curiosity in those scenarios, because of course it's interesting, like, what's the story behind this collection. But also, I didn't want to just come out and say, like, "Okay, let me buy that from you," like, let's build a rapport so that you trust me as a person. And also I get to learn a little bit more, right? So uh that conversation switched from, tell me a little bit more about the collecting history. And it turns out it was not that guy who had gotten him, it was his brother. His brother had passed away, given him his collection, but they both lived in the Bronx in, I guess, 1947 to 1956. They lived basically 2 blocks from Yankee Stadium. And the brother was kind of a always skipping school, troublemaker, but lovable guy. And his passion was, going to the stadium, going to Yankee Stadium, and getting his card signed by all the stars who flowed through. And at that time, it was so much different, right? Like, you could skip history class and run and talk to Stan Musial or Jackie Robinson, just because you stood outside the front gate and there wasn't security and all that all around. So, um, where we went, so that then transitioned to email, because I asked for more photos and we were talking about just life things. He was telling me that he taught psychology, and I was a psychology major in college. And so I was like, "Oh, I want to know more about that." And just trying to become a little bit more of a pen pal. And his main question was, "What do I do with all this?" He's like, "I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point I need to sell all this. It could be 5 years from now, it could be tomorrow. Um, and I just don't know exactly how to navigate that process." And at the time, I was in a job where it was very easy for me to take um, work trips that I could do on like a Friday, um, and then spend the weekend somewhere, and I could expense those flights if I was doing meetings on that Friday. And so I was like, well, you're in Tampa. Um, I'll go do some meetings in Tampa on Friday, and let's just meet up on Saturday. Um, and we will, I'll talk you through the collection, what I would do with it if I was in your shoes. Um,
Where are you
and
flying from? Like, what state do you live in?
I live in Austin, Texas.
Okay, so Texas to
Um,
Florida.
yeah, so easy, 2 hours direct flight on Southwest. But it was a bit of a leap because I don't know this guy really, and um, other than some messages, and I was just going to show up to his house, and really, where that was coming from was like, I want to help him out, but maybe some small chance that he's going to let me buy, one of these cards before they go to auction, because he was pretty set on, I think auctions will get me maximal value. So I showed up. I had like 20 grand in my backpack, which was crazy. But he didn't want to sell anything to me. So we just talked through it. And I was like, okay, we've got a plan. Here to help. Oh, well, I'll just have to win these at auction. And our plan was that I was going to be his like liaison to the auction houses because I knew a lot of the reps there, and I'll get him connected and get him good rates. And as we were doing that, Heritage made the best proposal. And if you go to Heritage's website, um, you can type in Greenbaum. The collector, the original collector's name was Mike Greenbaum. And if you put that into the search bar, you'll see the whole collection that had sold a little over a year ago. And they were going to be able to like feature this collection, tell some stories about it, and treat it right, and do like a little bit of memorial to Paul's brother. And I thought that was the right way to handle it. But so Heritage said, hey, we'll come down and we'll um, grab it all for you and fly it back to our auction house. So you don't have to worry about shipping. You don't have to worry. It's like such a big collection, right? And because it wasn't just those 4 cards that I mentioned, it was at least 400 signed vintage cards from 1949 to 1955 or so.
Incredible.
And yeah, just an amazing accomplishment that Mike Greenbaum had done to, probably skipped a lot of school, but like was able to meet so many stars, and um, he kept them in binders in his garage for 50 years, 70 years, really. I mean, 1949 to, or 52 or whatever, to 2022, 2023, like over 70 years. And then Paul found this, good home for it within Heritage. And so Heritage was coming down, and I said, all right, I'm going to come out early and just make one last effort at, can I get this before it goes? And, just one of those scenarios where I don't want to pressure him at all. But I got to take the shot, right? Like you miss 100% of shots you don't take, right? So I just said, hey, and he kept offering me money. He was like, hey, let me give you a cut because you're helping me out so much with this. Like, let me give you a cut of the auction sales. And I was like, I don't need your money. Like, I don't want that. No worries. I will say, I would love the opportunity to buy one of these cards. And I said it was a satchel, and he had gotten it graded at that point, and they had come back nice. But and he wasn't. He was like, I don't know. That was kind of my favorite one. But he was also wasn't sure what the price was going to be. So I was like, I'm not even trying to get it for a good deal. I am trying to just get the card so that it, like, I fell in love with it during this whole process. Like, I just really, that was the one I kept looking at whenever I was there in Tampa with him, and like going back in photos. It's the one that kept catching my eye. So we came up with a way to value it by basically talking to some really experienced signed Hall of Fame rookie card collectors. And He knocked off a little bit as like, this is a direct deal. You're not paying auction house fees. And I came with the cash when that heritage trip happened, and we got the deal done. And it's just been like, it was surreal. Like I think it's hard to replicate that moment. When I finally got it, I was like, my collection just went to a new level. And I don't even know if that's from a dollars and cents point of view, but just from my love and appreciation of this card, I was like, oh my God, I didn't know I could feel this way about a piece of cardboard. But I did. And I think probably part of that was the sweat a little bit behind it, trading notes with him for at that point it was probably 6 or 7 weeks. I went to Tampa twice. I was trying to coordinate all these auction houses to get him a good deal, and finally, kind of carrying all that water. I eventually get to take a sip with this Satch card, and it was just awesome. So that was the big chase, and it's still real. As I talk about it, I'm getting like little goosebumps, and I'm staring at the card. And that was just something that was going to be hard to top in my hobby experience.
That's such a story. There are two things that come to mind. First, one is just the provenance, the idea that this was, that you mentioned the early win, the Dobie and the Jackie were all graded. The Satchel was not. This was an off the grid card. This wasn't one that you said, oh yeah, I saw this at a show in Dallas once and I lost it. No one knew this card existed except for the family.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that comes to mind is just how much I'm sure that gentleman appreciated your help, that he was willing to sort of loosen his grip on it. He was going to sell it anyway to Heritage, or not sell it, but give it to Heritage to. But just the patience that you showed and the genuine caring. This wasn't a long con, right?
No.
Had he sent it off to Heritage, you might have been bummed that you then had to go and compete against people for it, but you still would have helped them either way.
Yeah, of course. And that's how it ended up happening. And I would have had to pay probably a little bit more, but I was like, again, I really was at that point. I skipped over this, but he was a really interesting collector himself, just not of sports cards. He has one of the best cacti collections in the U.S. And has like a greenhouse in his backyard, and he's got an amazing, basically pottery, like African pottery collection that he was walking me through. And so he was just an interesting guy to talk to. And then to your point, like you just got to be genuinely interested, and sometimes things fall your way. If it didn't that time, then I'd try to win it at auction. But this time, and the card just feels that much more special because it was not just let me wire some money to an auction house and wait for the shipment to come. It was like, this is a real deal with another guy, and the provenance aspect is huge too, where it goes back to the original guy who got it signed. One family owner. So
if I didn't rein myself in, I could just pick your brain about this we could just keep going another hour.
Yeah, sorry, I know I'm going long.
No, you're great. It's me. I'm trying to slow myself down here a little bit, but I do have one last question, and which is, you held up the card for me, and people who want to go to Instagram as this runs, they can see a picture of it as well. When you look at it now, right? What kind of emotions come to mind? What kind of feelings bubble up when you hold that card in your hand and take a look?
It's a great question. It's funny to be so sincere with this type of question. I mean, I am sincere with it, but I'm just like, it's just a piece of cardboard, right? And some guy wrote his name on it. But in my eyes, like, I don't know that I could have envisioned a better card when I was 10 or 11, and like learning about, Jackie and Paige, and, those were the guys more than Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, that I was like pretending to be, or really, just thought were the gods of the sport. And now I'm not only getting his rookie card, but I'm getting the one that he held, he autographed. it just feels like a little piece of him is here, right? And you got to tap into that. It's a little fuzzy, fluffy to think that way, but that's how I get when I look at these cards. Is I'm like, this is a guy that I admire so greatly, and he left his mark here, and it gets to hang out with me whenever I want, and it's just a beautiful card to begin with, and he made it that much better in my eyes.
Well, Luke, Bleecker Street Cards, what a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing it with us. We appreciate it and hope we can talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.